Hi, everyone. I'm Star from the Horror Cat Super Show. I got a chance to talk to David Weiner, the writer and director from the In Search of Darkness epic horror documentary series that has been on Shudder. Three of the documentaries are actually in the top 10. It's pretty hot right now. David and his team have a new series coming out, In Search of Darkness 1970s. And I wanted to talk to him a little bit about horror preservation, the documentary, and the impact of the 70s on horror in general. And I wanted to share the conversation with you. David Weiner,
Yes.
writer and director of In Search of Darkness, the whole collection now. I'm excited to meet you. Thank you for joining me. And I can't wait to talk about all of these exciting things. But I want to jump right in and tackle one of the questions that I have first, which is horror preservation is really my thing. And
Mhm.
I know, as I've heard you talk about this, that you almost feel like that's what the service that you're providing for people. And it's really important. What is it about horror that made you feel like it deserved such a grand scale of documentation?
There's so much material when it comes to the horror genre. And the horror genre going back all the way to the earliest days of film, Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Fritz Lang. It's one of those things where when I put these long form documentaries together, it's not a question of preserving film itself when I think about it, but I think of these things as a time capsule for present day generations. Love this stuff. There's lots of nostalgia when you look at these documentaries, but I definitely feel like future generations and younger people coming up wanting to know more about horror. When you think about horror, there's so much before when you show up, so much film in general, so especially in horror. Uh, People don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So this is really about time capsule. This is really about curation.
Mhm.
Um, and arguably, it is about preservation collectively because there's a lot of material here that is going to disappear, and you need to know that it exists. Uh, it's getting harder and harder to find these things.
Yeah.
So if a movie came out a long time ago, or even in the 70s, or even in the 80s, or even in the 90s, who knows, maybe even the 2000s, there's a lot to unpack, and don't have to add to get it in one answer. But the thing is, when media is growing in terms of platforms, we now are in a society where everything is streaming. And so we go looking for something, and it's like whack-a-mole. You can't find it because it was on Netflix, but now it's on Tubi. It was on Tubi, but now it's on Canopy. We literally need apps now to say, all right, here's the movie I want. How do I find it? And, you have to find a good app that tells you what's carrying it currently, and it's always going to change. So physical media is really kind of the answer, but not everyone can have a huge library.
Yeah.
And not everyone can find these things. And we can talk about this, but I feel like I'm already getting to the preservation versus the when these things came out on film, a lot of these people never expected there to be subsequent media where you can find it and have it as a consumer, as an audience, have it on your shelf. So these movies came out, they were in the drive-in, they were in the theater, they were in the grindhouse, wherever they were. The only other place you were ever going to find it, uh, and that was not even until the 50s, was television.
Yeah.
Then video comes along, and all of a sudden there's a huge library that these studios have where all of a sudden they're like, wait, people want to see this. Well, do they want to buy it? No, it's too expensive to put it on this VHS or beta medium. In come the rental stores, video stores. After that, though, what I'm getting at, and then I will stop talking so much, is that what happens ultimately is every time we get to a new medium, whether it's Laserdisc, whether it's DVD, whether it's Blu-ray, whether it's 4K, whether it's 8K, whether it's hologram, whatever it's going to be, Not everything makes the jump because it has to be licensed. You have to have a
Hmm.
studio or an owner of the film itself to make the deal to get it on a new platform.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these things that aren't making the jump, people are maybe finding them, putting them on YouTube. They may or may not stay there before they're yanked off because they don't own the copyright. They're just sharing it.
Yep.
There's lots of dark, George Romero is the guy who made the biggest blunder. He did Night of the Living Dead, and he didn't put the proper
Uh-huh.
ownership copyright. And all of a sudden, that was a movie
It was
that
out.
everyone could share, sell,
Yeah.
put on their television, whatever they wanted to
Yeah.
do, to the point where he's like, I need to just remake this my own
Yeah.
movie
And that's why we have an
so I can.
abundance of zombie movies in that period of time because everybody was like, "Hey, it's a free for all. We can go ahead and do whatever we need to do."
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
So
so.
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you
Anyway,
concerned? Are you concerned now that also too on streaming services that we may start experiencing censorships? Is a lot of. I'm thinking of a big corporation who has done a lot of censorship to the stuff that they've been curating, and then if
always, always, always. I mean, if you look back to the blockbuster days in the 80s, and especially in the early 90s, they were censoring movies because they built themselves as a family video store. And so
Mhm.
they would not carry certain things, certain ratings, like they wouldn't carry an NC-17
Mhm.
rating. So a arty film like, say Henry and June,
Mhm.
by Philip Kaufman, the director of, Unbearable Lightness of Being, Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Mhm.
and 1,001 other things. You could not get movies like that in Blockbuster without a fight, without a battle of censorship. And they were taking it upon themselves to censor a bunch of things. And people who were just casual families who wanted to watch a movie on a Friday or Saturday night, they did not know what they were missing. And there's a whole conversation to be had there about artist rights and that. There are many times now where even just like if it's playing in the movie in an airplane, there'll be something saying the format is not the same as it used to be. Like, be
Uh-huh.
aware. And that because that even it's not arguably not censorship, but it's not the artist's vision in
Yeah.
terms of how it's supposed to be presented. So quagmire when it comes to preservation.
Yeah. So to bring us back to the preservation idea, why do you think it deserved to have such an epic? Because I mean, you could have just done a 2 hour or a 4 hour or a 5 hour, but you went for it. Like you have invested time and into this. So what made you feel like this is something that I need to do?
Well, when it started out, so I'm a 70s kid and I love monster movie. I called them monster movies ever before I ever called them horror movies. I mean, I just loved sci-fi and fantasy and horror and monster movies and all that kind of stuff. Creature features,
Yeah.
Godzilla movies, all that kind of stuff. Um, I got older and I wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I found myself working on movie sets for many years, but to sustain myself, I ended up getting into entertainment journalism. I
Hmm.
worked for Entertainment Tonight for many years, and then what was fun for me, of course, I loved Entertainment Tonight a lot, but there was a lot of stuff I did not like. I didn't
Yeah.
like the tabloidy stuff, that was sort of like the stuff I had to do versus the stuff I wanted to do, like set
Mhm.
visits red carpets or sitting one on one and cutting my teeth talking to my heroes, which is
Yeah.
always cool. But I ended up randomly by hook and by crook, and I can tell that long tale if you want, but I ended up writing for Famous Monsters of Film
Film
Land.
that your shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
look at your shirt.
And which is a magazine I just absolutely loved as a kid.
Yeah.
These days it comes and goes, but at the time, 2015, 2016, I was the editor in chief. And I got to really live in a swim, play in the playground,
Yeah.
play in the sandbox, to mix all sort of metaphors. But
Mhm.
um, I mention all these things because after I left Famous Monsters, because print always is struggling, um, I was writing for the Hollywood Reporter, and I got to do all these amazing sort of nostalgic interviews. I was really doing the thing that I love. What I love most, whether I'm making a movie, whether I'm writing doing a segment for TV or the internet, or whether I'm for print or magazine. I love sitting down talking to my heroes, but I also love getting to know them as humans, as people, as people working through their careers, as people who are creative, who are struggling to get their idea across the table and across the finish line. That's the stuff that really I found that I have a knack for, and I find tremendous enjoyment doing. And those roads led to Creator VC and Robin Block, who is the CEO of Creator VC. He's a UK
Uh-huh.
producer, and he wanted to make documentaries. And the first one that he thought would be great, actually, he did one for Action Heroes,
Uh-huh.
In Search of the Last Action Heroes.
Carol.
And as he was in production on that, he's like, I should totally do this for horror. What's the best
Oh.
zone? 80s horror. I want to make a documentary that's all about 80s horror. We'll just go the whole decade. We'll do
And you're
every
like,
movie.
I got an idea.
Well, when I came on board, I said, that sounds great, but do you realize how many
The
movies
scope.
came
Yeah.
out in the 80s? It's just the scope was massive.
Yeah.
And so we worked together to structure it where wanted to give it some in between chapters context, the heroes, the villains, the text, the music, the what was going on in the zeitgeist of the time.
Hmm.
That was movies were reflecting the zeitgeist, and conversely, the other way. And
Yeah.
so that allowed me, because I essentially came on, I was invited to be the writer and director
Oh,
and
okay.
producer on
Yeah.
this, but not at first. But based on our interactions, that again, lots of long stories that I
Yeah.
can't.
When I think people mostly associate you with because they don't really know the backstory of Robin. So they associate you with the brand itself. Like
Yeah.
you are in search of darkness. But I think the cool part is that not only did you do one on the 80s, but then you do a second one. And then you do this obscure one that's like at the end of films that a lot of people probably have never even heard of, which I think that's like the coolest part. You actually broke them up into pieces. So that must have been a heck of a research job, but it seems like you
Absolutely.
have the background. You already had the background for it. So,
Well, I think what's important that I've learned over my journey in terms of making these documentaries, and I wanted to just sort of throw all, Robin is the guy who is the brainchild, and credit to Robin for having a great company that's very small, very
yeah,
intimate. We're all around the globe. I mean, there are people, and I'll answer your question, but we're
take your
in
time.
California, we're in, Berlin, we're in the UK, we're, there's
That's
someone in
awesome.
Australia, and we all get together and we all make this stuff happen for a variety of different documentaries. But
Yeah.
what Robin deserves arguably the most credit for is he's a guy who's got a great vision, but he also surrounds himself by people that he knows are very capable,
And
and it
yeah,
gives
it's
us
tried.
the leeway to do our best job and vision and make it happen. And that's why I've been so happy and so fortunate to be able to get
Oh,
up to
yeah.
over and over and over. I'm currently doing my seventh documentary as writer, director, and producer.
Hmm.
I'm currently starting and executive producing a third one that I'm doing while I'm doing these other things. I get to do a lot,
Wow.
and that's like a dream come true for me.
Yeah.
So to
Because you're
answer,
doing sci-fi as well.
oh yeah, we didn't even mention that as well.
Yeah, because like I
So
said, that's my second favorite genre too. So
yeah, so I did
yeah.
one. So after I did the first In Search of Darkness, I remember when we were working on In Search of Darkness, he looked over my shoulder, and I had
Hmm.
a Star Trek the Motion Picture original poster of the Enterprise, this John Berkey poster, and
Yeah.
he's just like,
Hmm.
I'm thinking of doing a sci-fi version of this as well, and I think you might be the right person for it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, are you kidding me? Thank you, please, more.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, though, these are gargantuan projects, but it requires organization. It requires a lot of planning in advance.
Mm.
Um, we have, what I was going to say is, during the course of my journey of these documentaries, we have come to really welcome the horror community, the sci-fi community,
Uh-huh.
a fandom community to be part of this.
Yeah.
So when we start a movie, before we even actually get it done, we'll survey people, we'll interact on
Yeah.
social media,
Hmm.
where everyone gets to say, wow, how cool. If I could help program this, please take my
This is what
idea.
it, yeah,
This is what
what
I'd
I'd love to
love
see.
to see. And so while it's not editing by committee, to me, it's a valuable tool where I could tap the hive mind of the horror community and say, oh, out of all these, I've just got 150 recommendations.
Mhm.
I could literally collate those and just say, oh, I did not know this title would even be in the top 25. That's a revelation to me. And that
Yeah.
will change my thought process on, wait, the fans collectively really like this title. I'm going to
Yeah.
make sure, where prior to talking to anybody, yeah, it's on the list of many things that I have to choose from. But now it becomes a priority because
Yeah.
so many people are saying, oh, you got to talk about this one.
Yeah. And I know this is crowdfunded, and I do want to talk about that towards the end because I think it really does fit in with the our part to help preservation. I'm trying not to give everything away, but what did you discover in the process of making this that maybe you didn't know about horror before? Other than
Uh,
just like obviously the movies, like I've never seen this movie, something.
Well, this is a different beast than the other
Mhm.
beasts. They're behemoths,
Yeah.
there's a lot to, like I said in the very beginning of this thing, you really got to organize yourself because I start with what's essentially kind of a wish list, because I break this stuff down each year. And so when I'm going through, I get to a point where I'm realizing, can I get the people that I want to talk
Mhm.
about it? When I do get the people that I want to talk about it, whether they're from the movie, in front of the camera, behind the camera, or they're an expert or an author or a journalist or a scholar, whoever they are, or a well-known filmmaker who's just a fan of the era.
Mhm.
Uh, Fundamentally, when it gets to it, and I put this thing together, do I have enough material that I think justifies even taking time to spotlight a movie? What's
Yeah.
different this time around for 70s horror is that I'm 50 years away from this era. And so there's lots of obscure
Mhm.
titles that I feel are wonderful and should be included. But it's quite the task to, some of these people just aren't around, especially in the first half of
Yeah.
the 70s. So time capsule or not, there are people who just aren't around. But I have found a kind of, for the people who aren't around, I think I've come up with, and I'll just say in a blanket statement, I've come up with a pretty creative workaround that I think will appeal to
Or
our audience and just say, oh, okay, well, of course you couldn't get that person, but you got this person who definitely, I think, really, really is the best substitute when someone's not around.
oh.
So there's that element, but there's also the biggest thing I've kind of had to tackle, and we're going back to the 10-year
Mhm.
version. So in Search of Darkness, part one, two, and three, all the 80s, we did the whole decade, started again, the whole decade, started again, the whole decade.
You've been in succession, really. You haven't had a break since the first film in 2019, right? Like
I
you've
don't,
just
I
been.
don't sleep. I don't sleep. And but then I did In Search of Dark Tomorrow as well. But then when we got to the 90s, we divided that in two halves. So we did 90 to 94
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah. That was good. I like that. I like how
Well,
that. Yeah.
for the 70s, we're going to go back to the full decade again.
Oh, okay.
And if it does well and people respond positively, we get to go again. And Robin is already like, if people like it, we'll do Search of Darkness
Break it down.
70s part two. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but one film at a time. I'm still making part one. But it's hard to say anything is radically different because we've created this sort of alchemy of mixing really well-known films, more eclectic films, international films,
Yeah.
domestic, North American films, a wide variety of people talking about it. But what I'm ultimately after is appealing to new horror
Hmm.
fans, people who don't know, and the people who know it all. how do I appeal to them?
Yeah.
Introducing them to stuff that they've never heard of
Yeah.
before.
And
So
I think that's kind of what you were doing in the beginning. I was telling you, like in the 80s, you do mainly the popular things and things that people pretty much already know. Second, same kind of things, mostly the sequels of a lot of those movies. And then the third one, bam, all these obscure things. And now, you're trying to go on every platform. Like, can I see this movie? Can I watch it? Where can I get this? Right.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to do it. And it's very comprehensive, and I think that's really important for people that are, like you were saying, they're trying to figure out where to start. How do I even tackle the 80s? What do I even, where do I even start?
And
So
well, it's
go
been very
on.
hard because there's a mountain of movies from the 70s, way more than I even, because I was a kid, so that stuff was not aimed at me as a kid.
As a Yeah.
Even as the years have gone past, I'm still discovering like that exists, or that had a different title, and I'm realizing, wait,
Yeah, there's a lot of
that
that.
movie?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna age myself a bit and tell you that this is my era too. I grew up in
great,
this,
great.
so I have a lot of fond memories and knowledge of the era too. And one of the things that I really love about this era is that all horror movies culturally say something. And
Oh yeah,
especially this decade that we get into in the 70s. And I've heard you talk about this, very mistrustful of government. And I think that the 70s, to me anyway, and I want to know your opinion on this, movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist, and especially Dawn of the Dead, really start to change how we see society. Society
hmm,
becomes almost the monster, as opposed to the real monsters that we were seeing in the 50s, especially after the Hays Code ends, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah.
in the 1968, when it ends and we change over to MPAA, but I feel like the 70s was kind of almost that break where we get back to the excitement of what the pre-Hays Code was back in the 1930s, where in the 1930s was just kind of crazy Wild West, and we were seeing all kinds of different ideas and things like that. So my question is, where do you think that? Do you think that we stopped talking about the monster itself and started reflecting on where we were as a culture?
Well, I think you're very on point, knowing that things changed so much in the 70s that it was like the pre-Hays Code, where filmmakers felt the tremendous creative freedom to do
Mhm.
whatever they wanted and tell us whatever story they wanted to. But and there, so in the when the Hays Code was lifted, there was sort of this new invigoration that all of these filmmakers had, and they were absolutely just charged up in the post-Vietnam era to tell stories that they wanted to tell, and their cameras were no longer situated. They could carry
Yeah.
handheld cameras and so on and so forth. But I think society at large ultimately um, was recognizing, maybe for the first time, maybe film criticism for the first time in the populist way, was starting to recognize that films were reflecting the era more than just a throwaway monster movie.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back to the time of Universal horror, and you've got Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and the Mummy and Invisible Man and Creature from the Black Lagoon, I think any fan worth their salt, or anyone who's paying attention in terms of storytelling, is who's worth their salt, really paying attention, always understands that the creature is a metaphor and the creature is misunderstood versus
Always anti-hero.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think this was the era where, when filmmakers can come back to that. Uh, I love going to George Romero. You've got a movie like The Crazies,
Hmm.
which just looks like a Vietnam film. There's a
Yeah.
sci-fi horror element to it, but the movie's almost undistinguishable from like a combat movie,
Yeah.
where the forces are out of control and the heroes are essentially the rebels.
Yeah.
It's almost George
Yeah.
Lucas saying,
Yeah. And it's almost like same with, like, say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I still consider a grindhouse film because it's still almost coming out of that almost easy rider, very similar in tone to that, right? Except it's horror. But that's kind of how I feel that it changes, that it asks those questions like, this is the catalyst, the change of industrialization was the catalyst of why the Sawyer family becomes, spoiler alert, becomes cannibals, because how are you going to eat,
What?
right? How are you going to feed your family? And I don't think it's a coincidence that that kind of is where we're headed now,
Oh yeah. Well, I think you another detail that you observe there is that a movie come like Texas Chainsaw comes along, and filmmakers, Hollywood is full of copycats,
yeah.
and all the way to the top. The executives don't know a thing. They're just in a position of power to greenlight movies. What was interesting about the tail end of the 60s and the 70s, and you have this new Hollywood, is that they were making movies, and movies like Easy Rider
Yeah.
is showing that you could have a Roger Corman style motorcycle movie, and it does amazing business on the tiniest budget.
Yeah.
And that makes everyone who's spent money, like a big studio with, Elizabeth Taylor in Cleopatra, it's going to bankrupt your studio because you throw so much money at it. And people are just like, I want something new.
Yeah.
Audiences, right? I want something new. So they don't know anything. So you see all these movies collectively coming along, and the Texas Chainsaw
The
Massacre
master. Yeah.
is an exploitation movie.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was sold, the way it was made,
Mm-hmm.
it was meant to be released. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it changed the game because at such a small budget for what it was made for, it made a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Now you can go parallel to something like Rosemary's Baby in 1968, a studio film, incredibly influential. That very much paves the way to Exorcist, Warner Brothers, big studio
Her Jaws.
thing. Yeah,
75.
after that.
Yeah.
But they're
More
saying,
budget.
listen, there's more to horror than we give credence to. It's not just sort of like the throwaway genre that you throw in at the drive-in and a double feature.
Yeah.
There's realize that you could bring in really good, talented directors to do these things, and audiences will show up.
Yeah, and I think to that too, we also have to include that we were that generation that really got made for TV movies. And I think that's also like a huge thing before there were VHS mom and pop shops. We had to watch our movies. How do we watch our movies? There was an abundance. And a lot of people don't even know that movies like, Salem's Lot, and those were miniseries. They were TV shows. They were not directly in the theater. Dual, yeah, right. And a lot of the big producers cut their teeth on that. Wes Craven, John Carpenter, Spielberg, Toby Hooper. I mean, all the big ones start in that era.
Yeah, they all made TV movies to varying degrees. And if you look at them, it's really kind of fun and interesting to see how many are incredibly cinematic and so worthy of the big screen that you look back in retrospect and you have to remind yourself that it was debuted on TV. But even Salem's Lot, it almost cannot be matched. I mean, I love the most recent movie. A lot of people didn't like that.
It was short. It was short, but the book is huge. So I mean, but I get what you're saying.
You are justified entirely to your opinion, but ultimately, yes, it is too short. But if you're gonna make a theatrical movie, you can't do Dune Part 1, 2, and 3 with it, right?
Yeah.
So you get what you get. And so what's wonderful about that arrangement actually is, when I saw Salem's Lot when I was young, and then I read the book because I saw parts of the movie. I didn't see it all when I was young. And I read that book, and I remember being just scared and frightened, and one of the greatest books I ever read. You have to also remind people that Stephen King he is a product of the 70s. Carrie coming out. Carrie comes out in 76, but he was, 73. And then he does Salem's Lot. And then by the end of the decade, you're like, Stephen King is becoming a name.
The household name.
I digress. But what's nice about these things is that you can always go to the book. None of these things take away from the greatness of a book that takes its time to tell a story. But Stephen King will also be the first person to say that a book and a movie cannot be the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they're just entirely different mediums where you're inside people's heads and their thought process and the scripted nature of things and the multiple subplots and multiple characters. I mean, even if you look at Lord of the Rings, there's key characters that just never made the cut
Yeah.
uh, because it was just way too many.
Yeah.
And it's still
Well, it's
great.
hard. It's hard to translate a story. I mean, Salem's Lot, for example, when he starts to go back to town, there's a moment where he's driving through in the book where they're just describing how beautiful everything is. There's no way to capture that in a film. It's hard. Like, how do you even do that? So for me, the memory of the book is very different than the movie itself, even though I love the movie.
Yeah,
The movie's, more focused on the horror. And I think the books are more focused on the feeling.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes you can't translate that well
And
into.
this latest Salem's Lot movie, when it came out, I was just in the right frame of mind. I was just like, you know what? It's because it was on the shelf for a long time.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and so I had heard about it.
Yeah,
And I was like, is this movie ever coming out?
yeah.
And then it
Well, I
finally
still
came.
love it.
And
It's still Stephen King, still my story.
but they didn't drop it on the big screen. Like they didn't have the confidence in it. And so it went straight to what HBO Max, whatnot.
Yeah.
Uh, I have this strange sort of like defensive position on certain projects where, this is a time where, studios are writing off movies for tax,
Hmm.
tax write-offs. So
Hmm.
the fact that it came out, I was like, you know what? I have no expectations for this to be any good. And so I was in the right frame of
Yeah.
mind and I really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to add that I went back and read Salem's Lot for the first time since I was a teen because I was like, I know there's more and now I want to
You
dive
want to
back.
experience it and understand it because I don't think we had at that age, we didn't really have the comprehension to even understand. One of the things I think is exciting about the genre, the 70s genre in particular, is we really were learning things new for the very first time. Like I think people take for granted, like, oh, CGI and all these things. We were watching things for the very first time. I mean, practical effects were amazing. We were watching sci-fi. I was watching Battlestar Galactica. I was watching, Star Trek, and I was watching Lidsville, and I was watching all of these things that were real. They
Right.
were real in a
Oh,
space, and you could feel them, and it gave you this uncanny valley feeling all the time. And I think that was a part of what made things really, really work for me anyway.
well, Lidsville, HR Puffin stuff, anything Sid and Marty Krofft practically, who knows what was in our cereal, but we'd watch that. And then it
I didn't care.
all made sense.
Yeah.
But I had to point that out. Yeah. What did you mention right
the
before Lidsville? You
the
threw me in a good way
but
with
oh,
Lidsville.
but Battlestar Galactica,
And before
Star
going,
Trek, all the things that I used to watch when I was a kid.
oh, practical effects. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Chris Glass.
So I was going to say that, like one of the big revelations for me about The Exorcist, which I saw when it came out on its network debut, and I was way too young to watch it, but I was determined to push through and watch the whole thing and really rocked my world, was I didn't know Max von Sydow. I had never seen like, The Seventh Seal. And then when people said, oh yeah, I can't remember his age, but he was just like in his 30s or 40s,
Mhm.
a 70-year-old man with wrinkles. And I remember they're like, oh yeah, that's movie magic. That's makeup. And I was thinking like out of all the distractions with Reagan and the pea soup and so much amazing stuff going on, I was like, wait a minute. There are two things in there that are real straightforward, but you don't even pay attention to, and you just take it at face value. Is that
Yeah.
Father Merrin is not in his 70s. He's a young man, but it's an actor and it's movie magic. And then also when they're levitating, when during the power of Christ compels you, and of course, and she's Reagan's
Mhm.
levitating. I remember thinking to myself, how
How
did
did they do
they
that?
do that?
How did she get up there?
And then you find out they painstakingly, she was on wires and they painstakingly painted out frame by frame, literally painting it out.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that that I think we take for granted that at the time, maybe I'll just say a blanket statement is there's a ultimate, I think audiences are way more savvy to the filmmaking process
It's
now.
kind of sad. It's
and I kind of
the
miss, I kind
yeah,
of miss, yeah, just how did they
the
do that? Having
suspension
not,
of belief.
yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, I mean, overall, I think, the 70s was a lot of occult, a lot of supernatural. And again, we start to get into the blockbuster once we get into Jaws, and especially when Star Wars hit, I think it really changes the way everything. I mean, it's a good precursor to 80s because in 80s is like chaotic, out of control, and excessive, just like the time was. Um, this was something different. It was a lot of, domestic horror, a lot of children in peril,
Hmm.
and things like that. I want to focus on the documentary just a little bit.
Okay, that's
Um,
fine. That's fine.
not too much, but I'm not even sure if you answered the question because we really got
You can bring it up
and I
and
and I love
I'll,
that. So my question was, if the 70s was at a decade where horror stopped hiding behind the traditional monster, basically, and was confronting more of cultural fears and things that were going on. Sorry, I think I distracted you.
well, I think a lot of stuff was the dynamic changed where it wasn't always about the monster as much. There's a lot of rape revenge subgenre stuff
Mhm.
that sort of horror or not, that was sort of one step in that that was a big
Culturally,
deal.
it was
I think a lot of it had to do with sort of home invasion or the disruption of domestic bliss, uh,
Mhm.
which is something where everyone's home is their castle, and then if it can be invaded, there are stories about that that I think were I think in the wake of movies like Psycho, for example, there could be the boy next door or the girl next door who seem normal, like Carrie, the retiring, wallflower, but don't cross them because your own life and peaceful existence is going to be
it's gonna
disrupted.
be strong. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is about the 70s, it's very hard to pin down one thing, and one shouldn't, because there's just so much going on. You've got the left carryover of just, amicus anthologies,
yes.
horror, Hammer horror, and you still have Vincent Price and, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and sort of
Mhm.
these mainstays, staples, and it still feels kind of like the 60s. And but there's the whole anti-hero stuff, and movies like Dog Day Afternoon and Network and All the President's Men and
Straw dogs and
Straw Dogs is that's our Straw
the
Dogs and Deliverance, that
deliver.
you can't have those without, you can't have I Spit on Your Grave without the
Yeah, talking about
tremendous,
the
yeah.
same. Mhm.
But collectively you have all these movies that it just is a very broad spectrum of what's going on. But there's a lot of movies trying to sort of capture a new decade. But horror filmmakers are reflecting off of these ultimate big movies that are doing well at the box office and part of the cultural conversation. How can we do this but add a monster or a creature or a killer or just a terrible, human, and get our revenge or just run away and escape? I mean, a lot of it had to do with sort of these crossover genre ingredients.
Yeah. Did you have any films that you really wanted to put in here that you just absolutely could not, for whatever reason, just could
No, I
not?
could put any film I want in here.
Cool.
And that's a blanket statement in that I'm in production on the movie. And so ultimately, I won't even know until I have my rough cut. I still won't know what's going to make it into this movie, because if I make a 5 hour movie, say I want to draw the line at 5 hours and then credits afterwards and stuff like that, because they get longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
And my
That's
and my
okay. We're
editor
still gonna watch it.
my editors have all rebelled, even though they're the best editors in the world. Samuel Way, who did the first four,
Mhm.
not like I quit. They were like, can we just do a little shorter next time? It's a lot to chew on. And Alex Townley has done the last two, and he's back for in 70s now. And these guys they're the best. They're the best, and they definitely deserve their spotlight. And I lost my train of thought. But ultimately, so because the thing is, ultimately, when I make these, I always go over because I do more. I'm not sure how many segments will ultimately fit. I'm going to have to
Hmm.
trim it down, and I often have more segments than I can fit in a running time. And so, just mathematically, I'm trying to put this together where if I say I do 10 movies, how many minutes per movie do I get? I
Yeah.
do a chapter in between. You multiply that by 10 years and upwards of 10 chapters. You don't even have to put one movie in if you're just mapping it out. You already have a limit in terms of what you could do
Yeah.
within reason to turn a movie around in a year. And so all the movies that I want to get in, and as I'm talking in my interviews, I will say, "Here's a list. We could talk about this," or "I brought you in to talk about this, but now talk about your favorite '70s horror movies also." So I'll
Yeah.
get a well-known person, I'll get someone like, like in the past, I've gotten Joe Dante, and he'll talk about The Howling, and he'll talk about The Burbs, and he'll talk about
Yeah.
Gremlins, but then he'll say, "Oh, we should totally talk about Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's such a great
Yeah.
movie,"
Yeah. Well,
and
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you have in here in comparison to what I remember, because that's also the other thing is while you're watching these, you're like, I forgot that that movie even existed, or that they do have different titles, or that, like, I don't even remember this movie, right?
and it's
So,
But
yeah.
it's sorry to
No,
interrupt
no,
you,
no.
but it's such a pleasure when I'm talking to someone and they say, "Oh, my favorite is this," and I'm like, "Huh, I didn't even plan to put that in," and they're just like, "I love it because of this," and they're thorough and the passion is there, and they can frame it and make it make sense. I'm like, bonus! Now I can add a whole new film and put it in this documentary. But then I think to myself, "Oh boy, now something's got to give."
Yeah. Where do I
So
move
I
things
have
around?
another cool title, but now that pales in comparison to what this other person talked about that I think is absolutely valuable for the movie. Thus my sleepless nights,
I'm just saying, it sounds like you're going to have to make a part two and three of this as well.
right? There's not enough. There's not
There's not
enough.
enough. There's just, there's culturally, there's so many movies that work within the genre, but that also are very important because they give a message. Talk about a lot of particular, like you're saying that the the rape films and things like that. But there was a lot of dilemmas that we were dealing with in the 70s. And so I think that's really important to show films of that culturally, just so we have that time capsule,
Yeah, I
right?
think not to get too like much in the weeds about the rape revenge stuff, but because it's very sensitive
Yeah.
I mean, just the whole concept. But that was the way it was in the 70s. There was a multitude of films where at one point or another you had a rape scene or attempted rape or some terrible thing. And for some reason, culturally during the 70s, that was something that people felt, oh, you can include that or you should include that so we can have that element to sell the film. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's a business. But what does that mean culturally? That's not for me to answer, but it's definitely me to capture in a relevant thing in terms of a discussion. We
Yeah.
mentioned Straw Dogs as well. That's a very, it's Dustin Hoffman. That's a very
It's
well-known
a
film.
hard film. It's a
But
hard film to watch.
same thing, and there's so many, Ms. 45.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I mean, there's a million titles I can come up with, but ultimately, Death Wish and that kind of stuff like that. These were
Those are my
very big
favorites.
things.
Yeah,
Um,
they were violent. They, like I said, it was definitely a precursor. They were violent, and there were things that I don't think we were supposed to be watching as kids, at
and
all.
they came in through our purview. And what I ultimately wanted to say though is like, is it horror? I don't know. It's horrific if it's happening to you, and that
Yeah,
would qualify as horror. But do these films actually qualify? I looked at Last House on the Left and I thought to myself, well, is this a horror film? Well, not really. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's kind of a rape revenge movie. I just thought to myself, well, how much of the rape revenge element needs to be in this, not only just talked about, but spotlit,
yeah,
as its own film, because I personally don't really feel like I think it's more real world disturbing versus horror genre disturbing.
yeah,
But you could have hours of conversation just about that element alone, and so it's part of the conversation. And I think it makes things interesting when I have to make these decisions, what
Yeah.
and what not to. Because people, I got to say, I Spit on Your Grave is a popular thing that people want.
Mhm.
You can talk hours about whether or not that's horror or exploitation or a combination of things. And lastly, I'll say about this, and just in any genre, a lot of these movies aren't just one genre. It's a multitude of genres.
Yeah.
And so if you have something that's, action, drama, sci-fi, horror, comedy, is it a comedy? But is it Rocky Horror? Is it Phantom of the Mall? Is it Eraserhead? Where do these films fit on the spectrum? Deliverance, where do these films fit on the spectrum? Right?
Yeah.
Frankenstein, these are satires of horror, but it's known as a comedy. Does it fit in Search of Darkness? Well, these are the things I again that keep me up at night.
I mean, you literally could probably do like sub genres of just everything and then make, oh my God, we could be here all could
And
be here all year.
that's the thing is like it's scattershot. There's just so much going on in any decade, but the '70s itself is even more explosive when I look back at it
Yeah.
in terms of trying to document it and understand it and reflect it and recontextualize it.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you one last question before we go. Since, like I said, I am somebody who's studying library science, and I am particularly interested in the preservation. And you being a journalist and an editor, this has been part of your career. This is in your blood. Like this, you were born to do this. But I do want to get back to the fact that this was crowdfunded. So, this is almost the house that horror built, the horror community.
Yeah.
And my question is, uh, what do you think the role is of future archivists and content creators and historians to keep horror alive for future generations? Because we know fans are already helping to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What is everybody else's responsibility when it
Well,
comes to?
I think an archivist, and this is my perception of an archivist, because the archivist does all sorts of things, and preservation and archive. It's hand in hand if you're an archivist versus and a preservationist. But what I'm saying when I say archive is like you always hear like I get nervous when I hear that there's films and vaults that are disintegrating,
Mhm.
and we'll never get them again. London After Midnight is this classic film
Where
that
is it?
we
We're
have these
still looking.
amazing Lon Chaney uh,
Mhm.
still images, but
Yeah.
the movie is gone.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until and then switching gears, like Metropolis, only recently did they find in someone's house all this additional footage that was cut out
Yeah.
from a particular print that had other stuff that didn't have what this print had. This print was sort of the theatrical print. There's other prints for different markets. And they'd only discovered this, I think, in like 2016 or something like that. And so
Wow.
they put yet another Metropolis thing together. And it's horror history because these were there's the director's vision, there's what the studio felt they could release, not always aligning.
I'm like, yeah.
Ends up on the cutting room floor. Some people say that this is my final vision. Others say we were robbed, and there's so much more. There's a movie called Deathline, like a British film called Deathline, that came out, and this is in the early '70s, and it came out as raw meat
Mhm.
in America. And they trimmed out all sorts of stuff because they're like, well, no one cares about the class struggles and whether or not Donald Pleasance, is angry because his tea is now in a tea bag instead of, the classic style. I digress. But the thing is, they trimmed it down for American audiences to be way more of an exploitation thing. And so American audiences think of a movie as raw meat. UK audiences see Deathline. It's an entirely different, arguably,
Yeah.
entirely different movie that says things about their culture and the time. But yeah, so anyway, so we're talking about preservation. There's all different versions of movies. Version A for one market, version B for a different market in a different country. There's so much there. So a preservationist, really, I think it's your job and it's an overwhelming job. But you got to categorize. You got to. It's all what's preservation about. It's for future
Mhm.
generations, and it's for education. And when I started making these long form documentaries, crowdfunded by horror fans, we continue to crowdfund it so we can do it the way we want to do it.
Mhm.
You know, no one asks for a 4, 5, 6 hour documentary,
Yeah.
but
Well, we're
somehow
glad
it
it's
makes its
here.
way on Shutter.
Yeah. You're like
But
three of
somehow it makes
your
its way on Shutter.
yeah, three of yours are in like the top 10. I don't know if you've seen it, but like so it is getting a lot of traction and I'm so glad because like where else are you going to get all of this information? Like I have been watching horror movies my whole life and I realized that I'm going to leave this planet not seeing everything that I've ever wanted to see. I'll never know all of the stuff. So anything I think that brings it to people's attention where they have access to it, I'm all for it. Because I also read in your blog that you were saying that you used to watch them at the library, the movies at the library, right? So it's also important as well as library science majors that, we bring those things into a place where people have access to them, right? And this is going to be, I mean, your work is going to be
And
stuff that's going to be in there.
to that yeah, sorry, we're going to talk over each other because our connection got a
It's
little
okay.
screwy.
Sorry.
But I think it's very important for no, no worries. I think it's very important that libraries are a safe space to have anything you want to choose to read. And the thing is, it should not be controlled by a government or a larger entity. It should be controlled by each individual, and if you're underage, by the parents. Be taken away from other people at all. It should all be available, and we are all adults, and we are all should be able to choose what we want. And I don't want to. It's very easy to step on my soapbox right now, so I'm going to back away slowly. But I think everyone knows what we're talking about right now. It's extremely important. I have very very fond memories of going to the in the children's section, all the horror movie books were there. And there were these Crestwood books that would each be about Godzilla,
Mhm.
Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, all sorts of creature features and stuff like that. Those were well worn. And I spent so much time doing that. And my mom oftentimes would have errands to run. She would drop me off at the library and we'd
Mhm.
watch a matinee and they'd project on 16 millimeter on a sheet on the wall. All the kids were there. And I remember watching, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and all sorts of other movies that absolutely rocked my world
Yeah.
and are some of the happiest memories I ever have from when I was a kid. And so, in my mind, any entity that is about preservation and about archiving material for future generations to access and to learn about, however their permission structure sees fit, then it should be there and it should not be controlled by
Yeah.
anyone else. But of course, terror, absolutely. The more we can get, the more we can access. The fact that I won't shut up now. See,
It's
the
okay.
fact that Canopy was
Yeah.
it was it Canopy and Hoopla?
Hmm.
Those are online. Uh, it's basically like you get to watch all these movies with your library
Yeah.
card. I don't know if people are aware of that,
Yeah. I
but
don't know if they are
you
either. You can have
go to
multiple
these
too.
streaming
You can
services.
have,
Yeah,
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 cheaper, free. And you
yeah.
can have multiple
So
library cards
get
that
your
connect.
free library card.
Yeah.
Yeah, get your free library card. It costs nothing. Support your local library, but download your Hoopla and your Canopy app and watch any movies that you want, and that's awesome too.
Are
And
people
I
going to
think
be
that's
able to
all part of the
see,
process is
are
just
people, are people going to be able to see that at the library eventually? They'll be able to see your documentaries at the library
in search of
eventually.
darkness. In
Yeah.
search of darkness. Who knows? Well, you tell me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I I think you should. I think there's just a lot of people out there that don't have access to a lot of things. And I mean that it's important to have your work out there, especially because I think maybe it wasn't your intention, but I think you're like, hey, I'm the crusader for this now, so let's do it. So yeah, why not? Why not?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that was very unexpected with this whole thing was I thought I was making a documentary that was interesting and entertaining and something that I would want to see. Um, and cut to people writing thesis for their, like a
Uh-huh.
college thesis, have asked me to contribute quotes and observations, and people have said, journalists have said, more than one, that oh, this should be taught in film class.
Hmm.
And I have that I've met through podcasting. I call him a friend, but he's a podcaster who's also a teacher, and he runs a film class, and he shows what he can of In Search of Darkness to illuminate his kids, let them know what's going on in horror.
Yeah, I mean that's how I've showed my boys this. We have sat through all the hours of this, so they're much more well versed than a lot of other kids are.
I
But
think
that's me.
so. I'm sorry if I'm weird responding. It's because we're having
Yeah, I
connection
think
issues.
it's
Say,
yeah, I can
say the
see it.
last thing you say. The last thing you said, though.
Okay. I think that that's relevant because I'm showing my kids. My kids are learning a lot. When we sit through these hours, I mean, we have a thing where we're gonna get Chinese food and we're gonna watch an hour or two at a time. And so it your 6 hours has gone. Like we've been watching it for like 3 months, right? Because the boys are like super busy and then they're big gamers. And so it's like, okay, I need at least an hour or two out of your time. And then when they're there, they're just like asking questions, and then we're pausing the movie the whole time. And I'm like, "Did you know this? Did you know this?" And so, it's exciting to be able, for me anyway. I'm doing my part to pass it down to generations, and I do thank you for that. I think it's probably the best source that people are going to get to be able to find quickly what they're looking for without having to go research it, and then to get all of the feedback from the people that were there and the people that were making the movies. I mean, this is that's it's no small feat, and I know that. I really do. So thank you for doing it. We're all looking forward to seeing the next installment. I hope you keep doing them forever and ever. And for people to go and watch the other sci-fi ones that you have too, because I think those two genres, especially when you get to like cosmic horror, they're cousins, right? And so it's important to know all that history as well. If you don't know the history, we're gonna lose it, and I don't want to lose it. So thank you very much for your time. It's been amazing.
Yeah, yeah, my
And
pleasure.
yeah,
I appreciate your interest, and I'm glad that you're sharing it with the next generation. And
yeah,
I think the next generation is interested; they just don't know where to start. And
yeah.
so you need curation of some sort. And perhaps these movies are giant lists of curation, but it's something, I'll end on this by saying that, in the past with people I've worked with who were younger than me, there were people who were like, yeah, I've never seen Pulp Fiction or I've never seen Star Wars. And, you can't ridicule them. They're just like, I know it's big. I know I need to see it. I just haven't gotten to it. There's just
Yeah.
so much. And I know, and sometimes they're intimidated because if it's like a franchise, they're like, I
They
don't
don't
know
want
where
to get
to start.
involved. I
I
don't
don't
have
know
time
what
for
to
all
do.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's overwhelming. So why start when you don't even know where to start? And
Yeah.
so that's, I think, if anything, maybe that's a service that this provides. And it ultimately shows that you can celebrate any of these movies where it doesn't matter because it's on an even playing field. So it could be, an Oscar winner, or it could be, went straight to video and no one saw it. Uh, Now it's on an even playing field, and you can choose to decide for yourself whether you'd be interested in pursuing it.
Mhm. Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Star. I really
Yeah.
appreciate your interest. And,
Appreciate it.
when this thing is over on the flip side, let's talk again.
All
All right,
right.
Star.
Thank
Great
you so
talking to
much.
you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All
Bye bye.
righty. Bye bye. Like I said, I can go on and on and on.
Well, I'm enjoying chatting with you, but
So,
I
so
do have
I
to
know you gotta
I have
go.
a movie
We
to
went
make.
over.
I have a movie to make. Yeah.
I wish I was there. Did you do any back behind the scenes?
What do you mean? Like,
Did you do any behind the scenes of like the process of you doing all that stuff?
not really, not really. I mean, we have BTS photos of me, like, interviewing people.
Crying.
Plenty of But yeah, no, we never really. we never feel like anyone's interested enough because fundamentally it's a sit down and it's an interview. So it's
Yeah.
cool to see me posing with them. It's cool to see me talking with them. But
Yeah.
other than that, I think uh, uh, the behind the scenes is a worldwide network of people working on
S-
different time
Still,
zones, doing
yeah,
these things
still
together.
important. I mean, we're still looking at pictures of Dick Smith doing the makeup,
Yeah,
on The
it's
Exorcist.
funny.
So,
You make a good point. What the people who are doing it think is mundane, and the people who are not doing it think it's exciting.
yeah, because I'd like to see it, especially because you have people that are editors and composers, and this is our craft. Like, but it's
Yeah.
important too. Document. It's still documentation. So it's how did we preserve this? This is what we did. It took 9 million hours to do this. That's important for people to see too. Well, there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot out of it, and I can't wait to talk to David again after the documentary is released. If you're not all caught up, go to Shudder, watch all of these documentaries. You'll have a lot of fun if you're a horror fan. This is right up your dark alley. And hopefully now you have a little bit more information of why the 70s is so important to horror overall. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again, shiver, scream, repeat. Bye.
Tell everyone you know to come on down to the Horror Cat Super Show.